Hello everyone, Morgan from Mirror Edge Networks. I'm here at the Cape Town HiFi Club's monthly meetup, and tonight I'm going to give a presentation to everybody about home cinemas. Obviously this is a huge passion of mine, and I'm looking forward to sharing my knowledge, my experience, and some of the projects that I've worked on with the Cape Town HiFi community. So hope you enjoy the video. Let me know if there's any questions or comments in the comments section below. Good evening everyone. Thank you for braving the cold to listen to what I have to say about home cinemas and all things surround sound orientated. I'll give you a short, maybe we call it the elevator pitch background to who I am and what my position and involvement in the audio video industry here in Cape Town and in South Africa has been. I'm only 35 years old now, so I'm still very young in the greater scheme of things. But in school I started doing commercial installations on the weekends and after hours, helping out a company that was based out in Durbanville. And as that progressed, as I got close to matric, I got a job offer. So straight out of school, I think I wrote my last exam on the last Wednesday of November 2005. And the following Monday, I was in full-time employment. And we, at that point in time, were doing churches, nightclubs, restaurants, all across the Western Cape. And that was great. And after about 18 months, I got a job offer at Bang & Olufsen in Cape Town. And so I started as a salesperson for B&O. And that was a huge learning experience, obviously being only 19 odd years old. And I was there until the end of 2010. And obviously at that point in time, the financial crisis was playing very hardball here in Cape Town. And Neville, who was the owner of the Bang & Olufsen dealership here in Cape Town at the time, downscaled from when I was there about 17 people down to about 8. And then later he went down to 5 and then 2, and he ran the company for a couple of years on his own before expanding again. But obviously he's now emigrated over to New Zealand. Joyfully from my perspective, lots of Bang & Olufsen clients in Cape Town are coming to me because of that fact. But obviously as things have progressed, I took a bit of a time off, 2011 I went back to the first company I was working for, and they had moved to Johannesburg and they were building music studios. So I built a music studio in Greenside for the SABC. It was for a company called Open Room Productions. So there was 2 live rooms and 2 mastering suites. And that was when my interest for acoustic treatment and building acoustically considered rooms started. So obviously that was a big learning experience up in Joburg. I came back for the same company down here in Cape Town and built a music studio for them in Woodstock. Unfortunately for me, the growth potential in that company was to go to Johannesburg. And where they were heading to wasn't something that I was interested in doing. I wanted to get back into the residential space. I had a lot of Bang & Olufsen clients who were calling me on a regular basis, asking me where I was, because naturally they wanted to still purchase equipment. So I took a few months off, and my brother said, well, start your own company. How hard can it be? He's got a company himself, which is in the IT industry, and he said, look, I've got 4 people working for me after 3 years of business. Maybe you'll grow something like that. And the company did actually go along that trajectory. In 2017, I had 14 odd people working for me. We were doing some fairly large projects, but I decided to scale down over 2017, 2018, 2019. And I was actually working most of 2019 on my own. From the perspective of COVID and everything that happened with that, it was kind of a convenience, if you could call it that. But what we've noticed, particularly since the pandemic started, people have been what we call cocooning, getting back into their houses and making their houses more comfortable. So from that perspective, immediately, as soon as most of the restrictions were lifted in 2020, 2021, we were getting into people's houses and setting up surround sound systems in a better way, making sure that the rooms were better treated, that lighting was considered, integration, devices, source devices were considered, and then of course the big push in terms of correct speaker location, correct speakers, surround sound processors, etc. So the joy from that is that I've put this picture of this cinema up as the kind of introductory photograph of this presentation. This was a classic example of a client who was moving from Johannesburg to Cape Town, wanted to make the house as comfortable as possible. He's got 3 kids, 2 of them are in university in the States and the US, and in Ireland. One is in university here in Rondebosch. And when the whole family comes together, they want to be able to go into the cinema room and watch a movie together. So he said to me, build this room. Give me an idea and let's get going with the cinema room. So that was actually the 4th of July last year. joyfully I had Earvolt with us for the entire duration. He filmed the entire thing. So there's a 45-minute documentary style video that's up on YouTube, which goes through the entire process. And I'm going to use that as the basis of our presentation tonight. The concept is, of course, he said to me, I'm going away for a month. Hopefully that should be enough time for you to be able to get a room built for me. Give me a quick concept and let's go for it. The nice thing about that process is we were able to do whatever we saw fit to be able to achieve the correct end result. Many people have particular requirements. No acoustic treatment over there, TV must go over there, speakers must go in whichever locations, but here we were able to obviously do it in the best possible manner. So I'm going to switch over quickly to the photographs of the actual project and go through one or two of the details as we went through the entire process of the design and construction. So this is the start of the project. We started with a room that previously had the TV up over here on the side, where there was a couch over here. And what's a bit funny about where everything was located was that directly behind that is the entrance into the house. You come down the stairs, there's a window there, and the doorway is on the left-hand side. So it looked a bit weird that you come in and there's this random TV that's through the window over there. But it kind of is what it is in terms of that. As you can see, there's a pathway out to the dining room and to the kitchen, and this was the room that we had to work with. So, I got my thinking cap on immediately, and so this room is 6.4 deep by 5.2 wide with a 3-meter high ceiling. So a really nice, comfortable size for a cinema room. Very nice high ceiling. And so what happened is, I got my thinking cap on, immediately rushed home and thought, okay, well, how do we achieve success with what the client is looking for? So he basically had two requirements. He's never had a room, so he's never had a cinema room. He's had a large TV with a soundbar before when he was up in Joburg, but he never had a room where he could physically go get some cinema recliners and be able to enjoy a movie. So the two things were, he sits in the back row, that's where the best seat in the house needs to be, and he wants cinema recliners. So we obviously made sure that we catered for that. So what I sketched up is, we've got our window over here to consider. We had this window over here, which I mentioned in the beginning, which I attempted to work around, but you'll see in a minute that became a non-issue. Obviously, we have what we call a front wall construction. So we actually located all of our speakers behind the projection screen wall. And then we made sure that all of our angles, as much as possible, were best suited for the primary listing position. And that became very easy by just overlaying Dolby Atmos's recommendations over this floor plan. So from a home cinema perspective, we obviously start with 5 channels of surround sound. That's your base requirement for a surround sound system, obviously being the left, center, right. And your first surround speakers are adjacent to your seating position. The second surround speakers are behind you, and the third set of surround speakers would be front wides. But in this instance, we started off with a simple 5 surround speakers. So obviously those are highlighted in blue, and we went with 2 Atmos speakers. But because we were building a construction where we had the timber columns going across the entire room, we were able to put speaker boxes into all of the different potential locations so that as the client upgrades over the next couple of years, we can move speakers around in the overhead locations to make sure that the sound is best suited for wherever he wants to sit. So as it stands right now, where these blue circles are here, is where the speakers are in the room currently. So that's giving us a 5 surround, 1 LFE channel, and 2 overhead Atmos speakers, so that you really get that experience of, as audio moves around the room, it goes to the necessary channels to be able to get the best sound out of the room. So as I said, what I did is I highlighted I said to the client in our last design meeting, this is where the Atmos speakers are going to be located. These will be for future consideration for as we move the speakers around on the sidewalls. This is obviously a side elevation. Quickly threw in the cinema recliners over there, and as you can see, the surround speakers are just behind his listing position, and when reclined in the cinema recliners, they're perfect for what where his ears are for the room. And also naturally, they work very well for the front row of seats as well. So there's no degradation of the sound because there's an extra meter of distance between the front row of seats and the back row of seats. The speakers that we've used in the room have quite a nice dispersion pattern. So next was to get onto the simples. I got a cutlass thrown together very quickly, and of course, this is I don't know, call it 28,000 rands of the timber and fabrics and everything, raw materials delivered through to site. And over the space of about 14 days, we managed to make all of that into a proper timber construction for the cinema room. So naturally, health and safety is important. We need to make sure that we look after ourselves, especially our hearing and our eyes when it comes to these sorts of things. So I thought that was quite a funny addition. So first thing to do, got the front wall just painted black behind where the equipment is going to be, so that if there's any light leak or anything like that, you don't see anything protruding or shining through from behind the TV screen. Just a bit of the timber detailing. So obviously, it's basically a big jigsaw puzzle of putting all the right pieces of timber together. Had to make sure that some of them were put aside for later on in the project. This is the window that I was talking about, and what we chose to do is we created what we call a window fill. So we hung a curtain on the outside of the inner side against the glass, filled that with mineral fiber and two 12mm shutter-ply boards, and closed that off. When I addressed it with the client, he said, yeah, no problems, because the outcome of the room benefited so much by losing the one window that it wasn't a big issue. And I think that's a challenge that we often are faced with. How do we sacrifice one part of a room to be able to get a better outcome overall? And so naturally this window became a non-issue very quickly. In fact, his wife said, yeah, I'm totally fine with that, because also it's a bit funny coming down the stairs to the front of the house and seeing this window that's a bit random and out of place. And she said, actually, if they had more time, they would have actually bricked it up and skimmed it off and put a bit of art on the outside of the house, because it would have made a better feature, but that'll be for a later stage. Very quickly, what we got onto then is, once that wall had been closed off, we could start with our front framing. So on almost all of my cinema projects, what I do is I create what's called what we refer to as a screen wall. So we put a certain amount of framing at a certain depth that will, at any point in time, house all of our speakers, potentially subwoofers, projection screens, or in this instance, there's a TV screen. So pretty simple timber framing, and that goes up at the front of the room. After a couple of days, what we did is these constructions that are on the side over here, those will become our speaker boxes for our Dolby Atmos speakers, the overhead speakers. So it was very simply a case of gluing and stapling everything together so that it becomes a bit of a production run, and everything can get mounted up as we need it. So I think the next picture is the start of the framing. So what we found is this kind of ladder configuration becomes a very easy way for us to be able to assemble a room. So these steps, if you could call it, allow us different locations to be able to mount speakers according to the requirements. I'll get into a slight challenge at a later stage just with regards to Dolby Atmos versus Auro 3D, because there are kind of two or actually three surround sound formats. There's one primarily that I design my cinema rooms to, but I always like to factor in future changes and upgrades. So if you think to yourself, in a Dolby Atmos configuration, as I mentioned, you've got 5 surround speakers, or 5, 7, or 9 surround speakers. But we don't want to limit ourselves if we need to move that speaker up and down because seating changes, speaker layout changes, or whatever in the future. So there's always a little bit of behind the scenes considerations for what if there's a change at a later stage. Then obviously, simply as I say, speaker boxes up at the top, glued and screwed so that there's no rattling and there's no vibrations or anything like that. Naturally, everything needs to be tested. The last thing I'd want is something to fall off of the ceiling. Joyfully, this is a concrete slab ceiling, which we were able to mount straight into. But if you look at my Facebook page or my Instagram page, you often see that we do a hang test on TV brackets, speaker boxes that get mounted to the walls, because obviously, joyfully, I've got insurance against professional indemnity. If something falls off a wall or whatever, we're covered. But I'd rather do a test myself and make sure that everything is sturdy and secure. Next phase obviously is getting into installing front baffles into the speaker boxes. So what we choose to do is a double layer where we've got a 12mm front baffle for the actual speaker to go into, and then a 4 or 6mm pine ply facing, which creates a double seal, a stepped seal into the speaker boxes so that it's glued and screwed, and we know that we're not going to have any resonance from the actual front baffle of that speaker. And that's just simply because we don't have a gypsum ceiling that we're able to install the speakers into. Because of the fact that it's surface mounted in a room like this, we don't want to have any rattling or anything like that at a later stage. And slowly but surely it starts to look like a bit of a room. So these columns are the basis of the structure where everything will get mounted onto. Next phase obviously is a lot of electrical work and obviously some lighting. And so what we've done, if I could just zoom in on the corner here, is all of our drivers, our LED drivers and everything for the entire room are located where the light switch is. That just makes maintenance much easier. So what we've done in this room is we've got 5 zones of LED lighting strip and 2 sets of downlight circuits, and then footlights that when the movie is playing, there's always, if you can imagine a traditional cinema, there's low level lighting so that you can see exactly where you're walking. But getting everything wired in was obviously quite a time-consuming process, but it allows us to start working later in the project. Obviously, the middle of winter, this side of town, this was in Cork Bay, it was getting dark at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so it allowed us to be able to work until the site closure of about 7 o'clock every single day. Space is always a bit of an issue in any cinema room. The joyful thing about this room is that we were able to do most of the construction work in the room itself. Most of the timber cutting, most of the preparation work was able to be done inside here. So joyfully what we were able to do is start using the construction actually as our lumber shelving. So we could keep the floor clean and keep everything neat and tidy as we progress through the room. Next phase was the carpet came in. There was a bit of a disagreement, if I could say it that way, between do we fit carpets or do we keep the parquet flooring? And naturally, interior designers, and I appreciate she had a specific requirement for this room that she wanted to keep it nice and warm, and so she wanted the carpet. But obviously, as we understand from basic stereo configurations all the way to bigger rooms, we don't want to necessarily kill all of the liveliness in the room. I'm quite a fan of parquet flooring and wood flooring, but the ultimate decision was made to put carpeting into this room, which did benefit us from the fact that we could actually wrap all of our acoustic panels in the room itself. So this is a pic of Dan starting to work on the front framing panels that we mounted up behind below the TV screen. Then this is just a quick pic of the speakers that we've used in there, and I'll pass the speaker around and I'll talk about the M&K speaker in a minute. But the reality is that in that cinema room, we're using tiny little speakers like this. The requirements from a home cinema perspective are naturally very different to traditional stereo, and we're able to use a speaker as tiny as this, but in multiple different locations to achieve the right outcome. Obviously, the benefit of M&K speakers I'll touch on in a bit more detail in a minute, but a personal favorite brand and one that I'm very pleased that I'm able to work with. So obviously the speakers go up either side of the TV behind the projection screen wall, and they get covered by fabric panels at a later stage. We received the cinema seating and naturally started to get them into the room so we could start to see the final distances of where the seating is going to be located. And these were from a company that's based here in Durbanville. This is just a quick pic of the wire management. So there was no equipment rack that was available. The client didn't choose to have a distributed audio and video system for the rest of the house. So it was simply the cinema room is the only room that has any electronics in the entire house. And so what we've done is we've just made sure that everything is loomed together nice and neatly, and the entire room control is contained on top of the Anthem AVR. And so we're able to just lift it up and slide it straight into the equipment cabinet, and we're not worried about components falling off or anything like that. So trying to keep all the cable runs as short as possible and keep everything as neat as possible. This is just a little profile pic of the front sofas. So we decided from a design element that these are what are called valance cubist sofas. And the nice thing about having these low sofas is, as I said, the kids are in university, so they still have plenty of energy and flexible and don't mind reclining on a sofa like this for a long period of time. And it gave us the ability to recline the back row without interfering with the viewing angle of the TV screen, while still being comfortable enough that you're looking at an 85-inch screen there. You know, if you recline on the front row, it's a comfortable size where you're not creaking your neck to be able to look up at the TV screen. So going with these was a particular design element that we considered in the room. And as we started to get closer to the end of the project, there was a little bit of off-site manufacture that we were able to start factoring into the project. What we've done at the top at the back over here is we built a fairly rudimental broadband absorber. So these slatted panels, it's 3 sections, which are about 250 mils thick, if I can recall correctly, with 100 mils of mineral fiber with a blanket coating the back and wrapped it with fabric in the front, with 25 mil wide, 16 mil thick MDF slats across the front, just so that if there is a bit of a bass boom in the room, and by putting in that bass trap at the back, it just sucked up the last little bit of boominess that we had in the room. The other benefit of having this mounted at the very back at the top of the room is we've got the center channel speaker located beneath the TV, angled up. And so there is a little bit of high frequency reflection which comes off of the back of the room, which you do encounter at the primary listening position, and by having the diffusion slats in the front, just breaks that up so that it's not an impact on the acoustics of the room. So you can see that what we've done is we've just suspended them so that they're not tied into the bookshelf structure at the back of the room, because this central section of the bookshelf at the back of the room is actually a hollow drywall construction, because this was a doorway previously into the lounge. So we didn't want to have any of the boominess of the bass that this absorber absorbed transferring back into the structure of this bookshelf, because it would create a resonant and vibrate and make a noise at the back of the room. So we actually just hung them off the top of the ceiling, and then closed it off with a fabric panel at the top so that it's all hidden, all the mounting hardware is hidden. Then joyfully we get onto the installation of the hardware, or configuration rather of the hardware, and we primarily work with Anthem as a surround sound processor. And Anthem has what they call Anthem Room Correction, ARC Room Correction, which is a proprietary software that they've developed, which helps us to equalize the bass from all the surround speakers and the LFE channels. So we got onto calibrating the room and making sure that everything was integrated nicely. This is just a little highlight. Obviously a big part of the cinema room is controlling the lighting. So we work with Control4 as a control brand, where you're able to, from the remote control or from a keypad like this, set different lighting scenes so that it's one press and it'll put all the LED strip lights on and turn the down, you know, if the footlight's off, or if you put it to a watch mode, it'll put the down lights to a certain scene and put the footlights on so that you can at least see, you know, what you're walking over in the room as you navigate around the room. And then we end with a completed cinema room. Obviously foot lighting has been installed. This curtain was supplied by the interior designer, and that took a little bit of a delay, and this is what the end result of the room eventually looked like. And so, yeah, about 6 weeks from the day that I met the client, we handed over a completed cinema room.